Good evening, everyone. We are so excited to have all of these beautiful people before us today. We're not going to be real formal. This is going to be an interactive evening of sisters. And let me explain something to you. Sisters does not come, that's not an ethnic club. I know we have a beautiful, diverse rainbow group of people on here tonight. And we have all, in one way or another, we have all been affected by the COVID season. And so we want to hear from our panelists, of course, but we also want to hear from our sisters who are online with us tonight. We want you to put your comments in the chat so that you could ask us questions. If you want to do some amens or how sister girl or you go girl, we'd like to hear those too. We'll be reviewing them. This is going to be, I believe, a night to remember. I'm going to start off and with our panelists, one of the things that I wanted to do, I'd like to go through 3 buckets as we talk tonight. I want to talk about COVID and what it means to us personally, because I looked at the backgrounds of our panelists and I know each of us has some kind of story to tell. And one of the things that we learn about these types of panels is that it's all about the stories. When people walk away from this and they think about what they did on this particular Friday evening, it's going to be about the stories that are left in the middle of the room. And this is our room. We have almost 50 women, I think, on here with us right now. We know we're going to have several more joining us. So let's talk about how we can interact with each other and impact their lives from this gathering this evening. My story is simple with this pandemic. There are some of you on this call tonight who know my story and how the pandemic, when I think about me and COVID 2020, how it has changed my life forever. As Mildred knows and as Pamela knows, my partner of 22 years, found out she had 4-stage pancreatic cancer in the middle of the pandemic. And I just never thought that I would watch her take her last breath on a FaceTime, on a screen, very similar to what I'm looking at each of you. So my post-pandemic, my post-COVID, going back into a more normal state, moving past 2020 and 2021, it's going to be a little different for me. It's going to be a little different for me. Now, maybe some of you on here today, you didn't lose anyone during the COVID season. I believe that most of us have been touched one way or another by either the illness itself or a person made that transition. But we do want to hear from each of our panels. We're going to start out with what has it meant to you? I'll tell you one thing, I probably would think on a Friday evening, a beautiful night like tonight, we'd probably be sitting up in a restaurant having dinner, so who would have thought that on a beautiful night like tonight, we would be sitting in front of a screen and this would be our entertainment. So I'm going to start with Christina Pennington, our lawyer. We're going to ask her, just give us just a little tidbit about your background, and then tell us what COVID has meant to you in 2020 and 2021 so far. Christina.
Thank you, Jeannine, and thank you, everyone. This has been quite a year. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I am partnered with my husband in Bennett Pennington, and it has been quite a year. In my job as a criminal defense attorney, before COVID, I was always in the car. I was out and about. I was parking here, running in there, fighting for justice, going back in the car, running for justice. And there was part of my soul that was saying before COVID that I really wanted to slow down, that I really didn't want to be putting 20,000 miles on my car every year just for work, not for play, but pretty much just for work. And COVID brought my work to a screeching halt rather. The courts closed down. People didn't know what they were going to do. Folks who were in jail had to wait for the system to figure out what it was going to do. Not 2 months, but even 2 hours more in jail than what you have to be in there is too long. And so COVID really closed down my legal world until it started back up. And now I'm on Zoom probably 20 times a week in various court proceedings, as opposed to running back and forth like I did in the past. So technology has become part of my hourly life, and slowing down, but speeding up at the same time, because when you're available virtually, people think you're available almost every waking hour. And so, unlike before, I don't have those car rides to kind of wind down and get ready for the next thing. I always have to be ready. So COVID has completely changed my practice, and in some ways completely changed my life.
Thank you. Thank you. And we're going to talk about, since we are women, we're going to talk about the other part in a minute about changing our lives, because I can see all of us on here, we like to get all dressed up. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's in our closets and what we found out we really didn't need anymore. We really, because I have to tell you, I got about 125 beautiful handbags up there. All of them have somebody else's name on it except Jeannine LaRue. And I'm beginning to wonder now, why did I need all those people's names up in my closet? So we're going to talk a little bit even about materialistic things. What changed about us during COVID? Now, Mildred, I'm going to pick on you. I'm going to pick on you because you and I have been friends for over 30 years, maybe more than that. And I'm seeing you and your gorgeous face sitting up here on Zoom. And I remember the beginning of COVID, my grandkids were saying to you, oh, Mimi, there's this thing out called Zoom, but don't use it because everybody's talking about Zoom gets hacked. And if you use Zoom, people they can get into your bank accounts and this and that. And then all of a sudden, COVID hit. And businesses were saying, well, how do we deal with our clients? I'm a lobbyist. We were like, how do we service our clients? And then politicians were saying, well, how do we hold meetings and interact with the public? And people like Mildred was saying, I'm just learning how to use my cell phone. And now you want me to get on a computer and go to meetings and what? Mildred and I have had some fun during COVID getting her connected. And now look at her tonight. Mildred, tell us about you and COVID. Technology, how has it changed your life? And you got to unmute yourself. Where's Larry? Tell him to unmute you. We need Larry, we need her unmuted. Nope, we can't hear you. We need you unmuted. All right, if she's getting ready to touch something. Okay,
am
there
I
she goes.
Unmuted? I'm still. Am I unmuted now?
Yeah. You're absolutely
You
fabulous. Go tell us. We can hear you and see you.
First, let me thank Pamela Morgan for inviting me to be a part of this incredible gathering of Jersey divas. And diva number one is, of course, our host for the evening. When I grow up, I want to be just like her. And so Jeannine, and to Pamela, thank you. I see so many of my sister girlfriends on, and I know that Irene Daniels is on. And a part of my story, some of you, several of you, Antoinette and Donna, they know what happened. I was in my office working, and the mayor came upstairs and knocked on my door. He said, "I need to talk to you." And was stunned because he was so stern. And, I've known him since he was, well, never mind that too. But and he came in and he said, "You have to go home." I said, "I have to go home for what?" He said, "You just have to go home." Um, I said, "I have work to finish." And he said, "You know what?" He said, "I'm the mayor. Go home." And there are those on the screen who know the mayor well enough that when he um, begins to raise his voice and assert himself, I said, "So it occurred to me finally to say, what's the matter?" He said, "You haven't heard of COVID?" I said, "Oh yeah, I heard something about it on the news." He said, "Well, it's real. And I want you," and so forth and so on, other names he mentioned. "I want you to go home. And we'll be sending out emails about how we're going to handle it." That was March the 3rd. Today is March the 3rd of 2020. It is March 25th of 2021. Who would have thought that we would be bound, um, uh, unable to move around easily and freely, but to the mayor himself, I have on more than one occasion, I've said to him, "Thank you so much." It has had a tremendous impact on my life. The phone rang one morning and it was not Beth, she was St. Barnabas. And they said, "Mrs. Crump, your son has been admitted as a patient." And I said, "What?" Um, and she said, "I hate to inform you, he has COVID." Well, I can't even talk about it to this day without tearing up. The first thing, and Jeannine knows me well enough to know this is the truth. The first thing I did was I went on my knees and I asked God. I said, "I only have one son. He's incredible. Please don't take him." My nephew had COVID. My nephew's wife had COVID. My nephew and my niece's son have COVID. But I sit before you this day to declare that God is good. They are all recovered, all back to work, back to school. My sister lives in Ohio. And so I have a heart and an understanding for those who are just beside themselves. And I say to this everybody, whether they're of a faith or not, I'm a great believer that God fixes everything. And so I send that off to my sisters who are on this call.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Thank you so much. And you know what? Madam President mentioned something, and
Mildred.
Mildred Crump mentioned something, Madam President, and that I think all of us on this day, when you think what she said,
Mildred.
when Mildred said that date in March of last year, the one thing each season, I will tell you, every single season that has come since that date of March of last year, I have been grateful because I 70 years old, and I don't know what the average age of folks on here, and I know there's some much older and some really much younger. But at 70 years old, almost 71, every time I heard on the news what group they were really looking at, I just asked God to keep me and let me see another season,
That's right.
just another season. And so I am grateful that I am here standing to see another spring. Now, Antoinette Richardson, we're gonna call on you next. Now, and at some point during this symposium, you are our educational guru. You and I have walked some of the same roads. We're both former English teachers. We both were
Love you
governmental
too.
affairs and all for unions. You were AFT and I was NJEA. But right now, we're more concerned about Antoinette Richardson. Tell us about your walk during this COVID season.
Okay, so first of all, thank you, Pam, for this event, for thinking me worthy to be on this panel. This gave me opportunity to think about some of the things that we're talking about today, and maybe some things that I wouldn't necessarily publicly share. COVID gave me time to do something that I never do, which is slow down. It forced me to slow down, to slow all the way down, and to have time for reflection, for personal reflection. And it was also a test. It was really interesting with me and my husband in terms of how we were able to really enjoy that time together, because you never know. Okay, and it really turned out in that sense to be a very positive experience, but a learning experience. I was paranoid. I didn't want to go out the house for anything. I wouldn't go on the back porch for months for nowhere, nothing. Spraying everything down, wiping everything down, afraid to breathe outside my door. And my husband would love to go to the store, and I would freak out all the time. And that was really the only, I'd say, point of contention. I would look out the window. If he was out doing something in the yard, I'd be looking out the window to see, is he talking to somebody that doesn't have their mask pulled all the way up? So I was like really kind of crazy. But now, thank God we're both vaccinated, so I breathe, a little easier. But just in terms of having never, other than vacations, never really spending that kind of time together, and just not knowing, and again, being really thankful that it did turn out to be good, positive time, and actually helpful to our relationship. In terms of my family, our children live all over the country. So, and I mean all over the country, West Coast, South, Midwest. So we haven't seen any of them. So we established a weekly Zoom call, and so we get to see the grandkids, even though only the babies want to talk to us. The teenagers, they just stick their head in and say hi. But that's also been really wonderful for our family, because prior to COVID, the only time that we would see each other was, when we traveled for holidays or to be together for vacations. So that was positive for us. And although we do know people who did not survive this pandemic, one thing, and this might seem a little weird, but my mother passed in 2019, and in retrospect, I am actually thankful that she did not have to experience COVID at 96 years old, going to dialysis 3 times a week. So, as much as, we hated to lose her, of course, when we lost her, I can see now how much more horrible it would have been for her, during those times. And the last thing I think I want to say quickly is, and it's personal for me because my work is personal. When COVID hit at work, I was doing we were just doing all this stuff, Mayor's Book Club, all these collaborative tables, and we were doing collaboration with the library, the Mayor's Book Club in the summer, and then COVID hit and the libraries closed. So I'm like, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Because I can't just do nothing. So we actually got 11,000 books donated to us. They came from an organization called First Book, donated them to Rutgers. Rutgers had them stored at Newark Public Schools, and I kind of like got a hold of all of that. We got those 11,000 books. And me and my policy advisor in my office at that time, Ashaki Larkins, we actually rented a truck and we went to all of the mayor's summer events, and we actually, with support from others, distributed 11,000 books to people who were just hungry for books during the summer. And we had on like double masks and, the plastic thing over our face. And we just said, okay, we're doing God's work. We're just going to pray and get out there and just do it and hope for the best. And that was my COVID experience.
I want to know, did anybody else have panic attacks as Antoinette was walking through? When, you know what, Antoinette, some of these things we forget. We try to forget it, and we're gonna bring Dr. Mattis on here, so she's going to be the psychological person to tell us what we try to forget. But when you talked about looking at your husband and trying to see, is he talking to somebody without a mask on? And I remember I went out and bought 2 freezers. I got 2, not big freezers, but nice size freezers. One is full with poultry and seafood, and the other has frozen vegetables and fruit, because I just couldn't imagine going into a store. I said, there's no way I can go into a store. And I also want to hear about some of our panelists' holidays. Thanksgiving. I'll never forget that Thanksgiving in 2020. I was sitting at the table, and you know how we do in our families. Thanksgiving, doesn't matter how long the prayers are, you're standing there holding hands with each other, and everybody's got to say what they're thankful for. Some of the kids were hoping that you have just a little bit to be thankful for because they want to eat, but you're all standing around the table holding hands, and then after you all say what you're thankful for, then someone does the grace and you sit down and you eat. And it dawned on me Thanksgiving. I said, oh, I'm going to be okay. I cooked my meal. I had everything spread out, and I put it on the table. And when I sat down and got ready to say grace, it dawned on me that there was nobody there but me. Nobody there but me. And I will remember that Thanksgiving for the rest of my life. But you know what it did? It made me stronger to move forward post-COVID. So we're going to bring Dr. Mattis on. Tell us about the psychological impact that this kind of pandemic has on people.
First of all, good evening, everyone. And I'll thank, as well as other people, I'll thank Pamela for inviting me to be part of this. And Jeannine, you're an amazing, amazing hostess. This is great. So, thinking about the psychological impact, there are a few things that we know about how quarantine affects human beings, and there's not a lot of research in the United States about this, but there's research in other nations, particularly African nations, and in the Caribbean as well, about what quarantine does to us. And there are a couple of things. One, the isolation, and none of this will be new, and the best of psychology, you know that it's good research when it resonates with you, right? We know that as human beings, are social beings. We were never intended to be isolated, and certainly not intended to be isolated this long. We also aren't built to deal with crisis for this long. So one of the things that we recognize is that in these moments, in moments of crisis, people make a couple of choices. They either look outward or they look inward. And for a lot of people, the looking inward, the meaning making, the trying to figure out, how am I going to do life differently? That process has been part of what this moment has brought. Others have used this as an opportunity to reach outwards to other people, to sort of build bridges and mend bridges that were broken before. but we also see some of the responses of people where the insistence that their right to harm others takes precedence over their responsibility to care for others, right? So the refusal to wear masks, et cetera. In these moments, there's some people who turn this into an opportunity to assert that they have more control over what life will bring than we know is realistic. And that kind of selfishness, unfortunately, in a situation like a pandemic, costs people their lives. So we see the multiple kinds of responses. The thing that I think we aren't paying a lot of attention to, just a couple of things. One of which is the fact that seniors respond very differently to isolation than younger people do. And all of us have strong responses, right? So the younger kids will figure out how to gain control in a variety of ways, right? So they start setting up their own routines, some of them, others will lash out. And the lashing out, because our kids, particularly Black and brown kids, are treated as if they are adults in small form, we tend to assume that they have more of a sense of responsibility and they can manage themselves in ways that are not realistic. And so we see a lot of situations where young kids are being abused because people are failing to remember that they are young and this is strange for everyone. It's going to be particularly strange for them. The thing I worry most about is the fact that we know a couple of responses happen post-pandemic or post-quarantine. One is that people move into a space of anger. And part of that is because when you're finally safe, you can express the emotions you couldn't express when you weren't safe, right? So we're going to see that people are going to experience anger and frustration and depression, depression is usually anger turned inwards. So we're going to see that people are going to experience that in really profound ways. The other thing that we're going to see is that many of us respond to anger or manifest anger in terms of lashing out. And so especially younger people are going to lash out and not know why they're doing that. And the thing that we're going to have to do is provide safe spaces for them to do that, right? So as an educator in a college context, one of the things I'm trying to prepare our faculty for is you're going to hear students get ragefully angry about small things. And you're going to have to really be compassionate, because that's how we've got to lean into compassion, especially for kids who are not used to experiencing compassion from the institutions that they're a part of. So, that's a major part of what we have to do. We've got to give our young people, we've got to give everyone an opportunity to do things that they wouldn't normally do and help them understand why they may be doing it, simply because for many of us, our responses are going to feel like grief responses, where things just sort of come up on you and you can't explain why you're feeling that way. It's going to be a natural part of the response that we have to watch for. So I'll end it there.
Thank you so much. And one of the things that I'd like to throw out to our participants, these panelists, they are experts in their field. We can. Now, I haven't been to my therapist in a while. I'm gonna be honest with you, doctor. So this going to be part of my therapy session right here. So what I'm saying to our participants, when we talk about, well, some of the students might lash out, some of the, you know what? We got them in our families too. Let's listen to what we're saying here and take these nuggets back to our own families, because we may have some children or grandchildren, nieces or nephew. We may pick up some nuggets here tonight that will help us with our own family lives. And I made a note of that. We have some people, and I some of you know her. I'm not going to mention her name, but some of you know the situation. A friend of ours, my family, where the woman just went to work. She just went to work and didn't realize that one desk over, her colleague had COVID. The colleague was a little ill and was going to the doctors to get tested. The colleague went to the doctors and came back and went to work sick. This woman, our friend, used the colleague's phone. It was on a Thursday. Saturday morning, she gets a call from her supervisor that says, you're quarantined because you've been exposed to COVID. 2 weeks later, her husband's dead.
Oh.
She had COVID. She infected her son and she infected her husband because she went to work. And my point of raising that, something for us to chew on. And I'm going to move into the nurse now, who just had the nerve to just be licensed as a parliamentarian during COVID. People are just remaking themselves. And we're going to talk about how folks are remaking themselves. But the reason I'm raising this situation is because there can be a lot of guilt left when we come out of this disease. I mean, can you imagine? All you did was go to work. And there are other stories like this that occurred during COVID. So now, Naomi, I'm gonna tell you, Mildred and Pamela will tell you, for years, I had this nice little mohawk. So the mohawk was brown on the bottom. My stylist, he would bring it up, brown on the bottom, and then I always had like a little the mohawk part of it was always like blonde. And then all of a sudden, this gray came. Now, I had told my family years ago, I'm never gonna have my hair gray. Well, with COVID, I wasn't going to the barber. I actually taught myself on YouTube how to cut my hair. I said, okay, it's salt and pepper. This is my COVID color. And I'm looking at your hair and I'm like, okay, we can do this. We're gonna rock the gray. So tell us, because one of the things that we want to hear first about you, Naomi, how you have fared during COVID, but we also want to know, it just opened up all of the disparities that we've been talking about for years, and all of a sudden, systemic racism was right in our faces. We want to know about you first, and let's talk about these disparities.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Norma Rogers. I am a registered nurse. I'm currently president of Region 3 of New Jersey State Nurses Association, which encompasses Essex and Union counties. I am a native Norker and East Orange grad. Right. So I cover the area from which I come from. And first, thank you, Pamela, and thank you to my cousin Stacy for having Pamela reach out to me. COVID has been interesting to me. I work in the pharmaceutical industry doing clinical trials, oncology clinical trials specifically. And when COVID hit, so on March 5th, I flew home from Tennessee. March 6th, I went and got my hair dyed for the last time, not knowing that was going to be the last time. March 7th, we had a party bus in front of my house. We went into New York because there's 9 of us that have birthdays, between friends and family that have birthdays in March. So I got a party bus. We went into New York. We had a good old dinner. We toured around the city, the Jell-O shots on the bus. We just had a great old time. Monday, I'm packed, ready to take my next business trip. I literally traveled every week before COVID. Walking downstairs with my suitcase and the phone rings, and it's my site in Boston telling me that they're locked down for COVID. That was my last business trip when I flew home on March 5th. I've been on a plane since. So that is my biggest loss. I miss traveling. But what it did do for me is it caused me to examine what I wanted to do with my life, and to take the position that my boss had been trying to get me to take for 3 years. But because I love traveling so much, I would not take it. So now I moved into the clinical operations part of the pharmaceutical industry, still managing the trials, but on a different side of it. The biggest issue I had with COVID was also the guilt, because I'm no longer at the bedside and haven't been for 18 years. And I wanted to go back to the bedside when COVID hit to help my colleagues as I'm watching what they were going through social media, and just those nurses I know through my nursing sorority, Chi Eta Phi, through my nurses, and my New Jersey State nurses. I'm looking at all of my colleagues and what they're going through. And I wanted to go back on the front lines. And my doctor said to me, you almost died once from pneumonia. You cannot go on the front lines. Do what you do from the background and supervise and put the resources in place that and make people connect the way that I normally connect people. And I had to embrace that I couldn't be out there in the front line, but I had to do what I do on the back. So my role was to provide information constantly. So because I work in pharma and I have access to certain information, I was constantly posting on social media and sending out the emails to people of where these COVID panels were being set up at, as the more information was coming out and as we're learning. And one of the things I tell people is with the research is, with the medical atrocities that happened in the past, we can't change that, but they did happen. And we must acknowledge that they did happen. And that's causing some of this hesitation that we're seeing right now. And until people say that, yes, it happened, people are still being hesitant about the vaccine in some areas. But at the same time, because the vaccines were politicized, also turned people off from getting the vaccines. And I tell people, go research it for yourself. All of the information you need is on the 3 pharmaceutical companies' website. Everything you need to know about this vaccine is on the CDC website. Stop listening to the news, talk to your friends and family. And I'm fortunate I was able to get my vaccine. I got both shots, I'm good. And so I was able to get my parents, and now I think between all of my siblings and my family, like everybody's been that needed to be vaccinated is now vaccinated. But it was challenging even getting those appointments, and now what I've been doing is just talking to people on how to navigate that COVID website, how to log on at different times of the day to try to see if you can get an appointment. Calling and just constantly calling and trying to find where you can get those vaccines at. The other thing that COVID did for me was it caused me to slow down. As a person that traveled weekly, I literally would have 4 suitcases lined up in my living room, drop one off, pick up the next one and keep going. Now they're sitting in the room waiting for me to go somewhere, So it's changed my life in that way. It's caused me to appreciate the fact that I have both my parents, because early on in April, we lost my great aunt who was 95 years old to COVID. And then we lost my last uncle. He didn't die from COVID, but this is an uncle where, like, my nursing colleagues that know me know that he got sick on a cruise ship in Aruba, and I got on a plane and went to Aruba, and got my mother down there because we didn't know if he was going to make it. And he did, and he recovered, and he did well. And then when he got sick again, and the hardest part for me was that very first funeral and watching it on Facebook Live and not being able to say goodbye to my last uncle. So those are the things that I think we have to look at, and we have to try to get people to understand that there's still a lot to be learned from the vaccines. There's still a lot of research going on, which is why it has FDA emergency approval. The trials are continuing. There's still more information. We don't have all of the answers yet. And the public has to understand that we don't have all of the answers. So if I tell you I don't know, I'm being as honest with you as I possibly can, because I don't know, because we don't have that information that you may be looking for. One of the questions that keep coming up with the younger women is their reproductive health. And I tell them to please talk with your GYNs, healthcare providers, specifically about that, because I don't have the answer, but they may be able to give you a little better answer in their hesitancy to take the vaccines because they're worrying about their reproductive health later on. And it's a good, valid concern because we don't know. And so I constantly telling people, check with your health, talk to your healthcare providers, have those blunt, honest conversations. The other issue that we're going to see when this is over with is what type of illnesses are we going to have? And they're starting to track that now, because we didn't go to the doctor for a year, because we didn't go out of the house. What illnesses, how advanced are these cancers going to be? So I know on the oncology side, they're starting to track how advanced cancers are when a person comes in for the first time. Those that were probably getting treatments did continue them, hopefully. Then you have those patients that stopped treatment altogether because they were afraid to go out and because We changed the way that we did things. They didn't want to go into the hospitals because the hospitals were so overflowed. And so there's so much that we just don't know and that we still have to track. And I can't wait to see what some of this additional data comes out, you know, in another year from now, as they're starting to track the health disparities. We as a people are already underserved, and COVID just made it worse. We were dying at a higher rate because we don't have the resources in our neighborhoods. A lot of the hospitals in Essex Union County closed, you know, so you don't have all of the facilities that you need. I'm in Plainfield. If I get sick, I have to either go to JFK where I used to work or over to Overlook. You know, I have the Muhlenberg emergency room, but if I get truly sick, and if I'm on the other side of Plainfield, then I may go to Somerset Medical Center or over into New Brunswick to Robert Wood Johnson. But I don't have a strong facility here in my city anymore where I can just run to, you know, unless it's just, you know, like when I fell down the steps on the way to a gala and had to go get my knee looked at, you know, like those type of things. I can go to the urgent center. We don't have the resources. So what do you do for neighborhoods where you don't have the resources? And when you look at the list of where the vaccines are and where even COVID testing, we had to bring in portable COVID testing up here because when you think about it, there was no place to really go get COVID testing in the beginning. Not everybody has a car to go over to Kane University, you know, and I like how Newark has their COVID testing as well as the vaccines were set up nicely. I was easily able to get my dad an appointment over at Essex County College, much easier than I could find a place up here for my mom, you know, and so it makes a difference in the communities of the resources that are poured back into it. And I think I'm going to stop there.
You made me think about so much. And what you have said is a beautiful segue into our next panelist. You're looking at a woman, Naomi, who has high blood pressure. I had high cholesterol. I was overweight, and having lost Maria, I watched that process up so close on the screen. I knew I didn't want to be on a vent, and I lost a lot of relatives and friends. They died of COVID, a lot. And I don't even like to even think about the faces right now because it's just too overwhelming to even think about. But I tell you, one of the things that I did do, and this is why I said you're a great segue into our next speaker. I called my doctor. Now, I never thought that I would even have any respect for telemedicine. I was like, no, there's no way in the world somebody can sit in front of a screen and make me feel much better about my health. But I also knew I wasn't coming out the house. So it had to work. And so I said, well, this is what I'm going to do. I am going to walk every morning. I'll go out to the park because I couldn't go to the gym anymore. I'm like, I got to lose this weight. And when they told me your cholesterol is so high, you're very close to stroke level. It was up there at 260. I said, oh my goodness, what can I do? He said, I'm going to give you a pill. You got to take it. He said, but you got to lose the weight. You got to watch everything you eat. So everything in my freezers had to do with lowering my cholesterol. Everything I put in my mouth, I called it medicine because I knew I could not go to the hospital. I was just too paranoid to go to the hospital. Long story short, I'm 40 some pounds lighter. I didn't lose that all in 1 year. I lost it over 2.5 years, but I kept it down. I didn't get the COVID hits. My cholesterol level, my doctor actually, he had tears. I said, you're making me want to cry. Cholesterol is down to 199. All the good cholesterol and the bad is perfect. Blood pressure, great. Because I knew I couldn't go to a hospital.
Right.
I was just freaking out. So Dr. Turner, tell us about that. You got all the fitness stuff. You're supposed to be our expert here. What are you seeing? First, we want to know how you fare during COVID, and have people started taking better care of themselves? Because folks are telling me they didn't even catch a cold last year. They were afraid to catch a cold. I said, well, if you kept your mask on, you didn't have any germs coming in your body anyway. That's probably what happened. But tell us about this.
Exactly. So, well, first of all, Ms. LaRue, I just want to say I'm sending you virtual snaps for you basically waging what I call your own war on Rona, which I have defined over the course of this pandemic, and I'll come back to this in my comments a little bit later. I have been trying to get a movement of wellness and health going, really using the coronavirus as an opportunity for us to rebuild ourselves, to borrow some words from Kanye West, harder, better, faster, stronger, to become more resilient, healthy people. And I've been calling it the hashtag War on Rona Wellness and Resiliency Movement. And what I mean by that is I define Rona as not just the coronavirus. I define it as illness in general, inequity, disempowerment, and what the confluence of events over the last year of the coronavirus, the social inequity and injustices that we've seen, the health inequities that we've seen, it's basically caused us. And the fact that we have all, I mean, the running theme of everybody's comments tonight is, are that we have had to slow down. And that slowing down has forced us to engage in a process of self-reflection. So really looking at all these systems and processes and things that were broken, we are now kind of being forced to fix them. So it's wonderful, again, just looking at your particular health journey, Ms. LaRue, around that you basically use this as an opportunity to get healthy. You needed to lose that weight and get that cholesterol down sooner, but this crisis actually became an opportunity and a motivating factor for you to become a stronger, resilient, and more healthful person. So I will just rewind a second and talk about what I've seen and how the pandemic has affected me as an executive, a television executive, because there's sort of three parts to me: a television executive, a health advocate, an educator, and founder of Mad Cool Fitness, and then also just as a human. So first, in terms of television and my day job, I mean, it's been an incredible process because we basically pulled the plug on, I want to say something like 30 productions overnight, when the pandemic hit. Literally everybody just dropped all the props on the stage. Everybody's like, everybody go home. And that was, it was chaos, right? That had never been done before. So that was very challenging. And then moving from that phase to starting production up again in a safe way for everybody, that was also challenging. And the company has invested enormous amount of financial resources and human resources and testing and safety protocols so that we produce, and we have been producing since last summer. And I will tell you, just like many of you on the call, I've been fortunate to have a job and continue to work, but it's, the running around, which I was doing quite a bit of travel to Los Angeles and to Canada for different productions, that has been replaced by what I call Zoomathons, where you're basically on Zooms 8 hours a day. And on one hand, I think it's great and it's positive to not have to do as much physical running around, but I think there's probably also a mental health toll to be sitting in front of a screen all day long, isolated in a bubble in your household. So that has had there have been some challenges there, I think, professionally. In terms of my own personal work in my business, Mad Cool Fitness, and my nonprofit, Mad Cool Community, when this pandemic hit, and just to back up, I specifically focus on my doctorate is in health education and behavioral science. So some of the things that Dr. Mattis was talking about, I 100% agree with. And I also look at it from a behavior science perspective and how our health behaviors are a function of not only our individual factors like our thoughts and beliefs, but they're also a function of the social and physical environments that we live in. So anyway, when this pandemic hit, I said to myself, these lockdown measures, although a public health necessity in order to, because the virus was running rampant, and basically what the CDC needed to do, had to do, and the government is basically hit the circuit breaker to kind of stop everything so that we could basically catch up, because we had no idea. We clearly did not know what this virus was, and we didn't have time. We didn't know anything about it. So it was, the lockdown measures were really designed to give us some time to sort of catch our breath, understand it a little bit better, and get our arms around it. But anyway, as a function of that, I knew, as an outcome of that, I knew that people's mental health and behavioral health were going to be negatively affected by this. So even though it was important to lock everything down, I knew then that back in March, this was going to cause a problem in terms of people feeling depression, isolation, not having access to a gym. And at that point, even the parks were locked down. You could even walk around your block. I mean, technically you were supposed to be locked down in your house. And I knew that that was going to have tremendous negative impacts on people's health. So I started to do little wellness. I said, well, what can I do sitting in my living room in my house in Newark? And I started to reach out to different community groups and basically offer these wellness webinars where I focused on how do we take control of our health in this pandemic? How do we take control of our mental health? How do we take control of our behavioral health? How do we have a sense of empowerment? Because when we feel empowered and feel like we have the tools to effectuate change, that is a counter agent to depression. Depression is when you feel like you have no hope and you have no ability to affect an outcome. And so, so I started to do that. And then I also started to teach a class, also a program to the parents and the students and the teachers at a New Jersey charter school, Jersey City charter school, that participated in my dissertation, because I was also extremely worried about teachers and students and parents. And one of the things that I've realized from that experience is that this has been an enormously stressful time for kids. It's been an enormously stressful time for teachers and for parents. In some ways, I feel very fortunate and blessed because none of my family members, touch wood, no one's gotten sick. And my 80-year-old mother just got her first shot, and my sister just got her first shot. And I'm hopefully going to get my first shot in the next couple of weeks. So in terms of, from a family perspective, I feel very blessed that I personally, none of my family or friends got sick or died from this virus. But working with this community and this school, a lot of these kids lost friends and family members. There's also the added stress of the economic stress of, some people lost their jobs, or hours and pay were cut back, so their parents are stressed out, and that stress is translating to kids. There's also the stress of their whole world got completely upended, and kids in particular. I think, as we all know, as humans, we need social interaction, but especially for kids and adolescents, they need that human interaction. Their social circles are tremendously important to them. And one of the other sort of additional challenges for an adolescent is that they haven't lived long enough to have perspective. So they haven't had enough trials and tribulations to know that everything that's bad, it usually doesn't stay bad. You just got to hang in there long enough to get to the good. And so for an adolescent, all they can see is that things are really bad. So, being able to hear them, like really hear them and listen to them and listen to their struggles has been eye-opening for me to really understand not only the current effects of this pandemic, but we're going to have the pandemic part 2, or the epilogue, when schools really start the reopening process, and these kids, and I think to a certain extent, the teachers and the parents too, everybody is going to need to go through a period of transition and need some support into this first of all, of coming out of, lockdown and the sort of social isolation that we've been in, but also dealing with some of these after effects. And also the fact that, quite frankly, we're not going to go back to the way things were before the pandemic. It's going to be a new version. So I will also say for myself personally, as a human, I've taken this opportunity because things have slowed down, to be I always kind of thought of myself as a thoughtful, deliberate person. I try to live purposely and in my purpose. But I think having the time to sit, not running around in suitcase to suitcase and city to city, has really forced me in a good way to think about what is important. What are my priorities? What is really necessary? I think somebody talked about, Ms. LaRue, I think you talked about your 125 bags in your closet. It's like, I got probably about 200 pairs of shoes up in my closet. Do I really need all those shoes? I only got 2 pairs of feet. It's like, well, what am I doing with all these shoes? I think this is an opportunity for all of us to really bring it all the way down, to strip away a whole bunch of stuff, material, mental, and other stuff, and really think about who we are and our purpose and what it is that we want to accomplish in life. And this virus has also shown us the fragility of life, that it is here one moment and it is gone the next. And so we have to be incredibly deliberate in the time that we have here and the things that we do, the time that we spend with the people that we care about, and just making sure that everything that we do is treated as precious. And I'm not sure, had it not been for this horrible pandemic, which I absolutely would not have wished this upon the world, but since it did happen, how can we use this as an opportunity to come out of this as a better people individually, and also to build better systems and structures that are better and more equitable. So I'll leave my comments there.
I don't know, the screen keeps wanting to do. You know what Doc, let me tell you one of the things that you made me think about. And I don't want to embarrass you, all right, but I'm gonna embarrass you.
Okay.
Because your bio is just that impressive. And one of the things that this pandemic has caused me, and I think a lot of other people, to really think about, we got.
Mm-hmm.
You look at personalities like yourself, that we get a chance. I mean, we know your travels, we know what you do, your daytime job, but we get a chance to look at you and listen to you and spend time with you on a Friday night. Didn't cost us a dime. Now, I don't know what it would have cost if we had to go somewhere outside of our homes and hear you speak. I don't know what you would have charged and what they would have charged so that they could pay you. But about 4 or 5 months ago, we had an opportunity to sit for over an hour and listen to Eddie Glaude. Now, and he was promoting his book, and it was like, usually he would charge like $30,000 for the speech. And he told my son, he said, I'll come as long as you just give a plug for my books and put it in the chat so people will buy the books. And we're like, whoa, that's a good night. And we got. And that's one of the things that this pandemic has caused a lot of people to sit back and think about. Now we're going to walk to another area. I feel guilty at times, and I've had this conversation with Pamela. I listen to folks who have lost their jobs, and some of them are negotiating so that they won't be evicted from their apartments. And I know some folks who even just turned the cars in. They said they couldn't afford it anyway. Folks are talking about coming to pick them up, and they weren't driving anywhere anyway. And I feel guilty because I've been blessed. I mean, I don't know. I'm picking up clients. I'm not asking for any clients, but they're calling me, and I'm not going to turn them down. But I'm looking at folks like Della Walker. She's dealing with the hardcore facts of folks who need jobs. They need to be trained. They don't even know. How do you interview now, Della? I mean, I'm listening to folks who are like, I don't know what to do. Some folks they're still owed 3 months of unemployment checks. I got a call, got a call from the woman who manages the public storage for me. And she calls me and I'm like, I know I paid the bill because that's on automatic payment. So I said, what happened? She said, no, I'm calling you because my husband hasn't gotten his unemployment since December. And I'm like, this is where we are right now. Tell us first, Della, your story. How have you been faring during this pandemic? And then tell us about the people, the phone calls and the emails, what keeps you awake at night?
Thank you, Jeannine. Yes, this COVID has proved to be a year of tremendous loss for our family, and it took a lot of prayer, meditation, and I'll be honest, just nothing but the grace of God to be able to sit back and take this in and reset. I was recently married when the pandemic hit, and so I think the part of the blessing in the pandemic that I found was being able to really get to know my spouse in a deepened way that, I've even heard folks who've been married for 40 years said they've learned something new about their spouse in the pandemic, right? And so it gave an opportunity for us to deepen our relationship. And then it provided an opportunity for folks to be still and just take a deepened look at America and how it treats its citizens with an emphasis on Black lives. I had never in my lifetime had an opportunity to have such real conversations in real time. It unveiled just the economic disparities faced by many of our communities and then offered a space for our corporations that we work with at the Alliance and our accomplices to right some of the wrongs and remove these systemic barriers facing Black people in this country. As we dig into the impact of COVID on the workplace, we now know that COVID-19 has driven millions of women out of the workplace. We have not seen a loss of roles for women since almost nearing the Great Depression. We've gone back that far. We've lost 30 years of gains in employment for women. And it's taken a toll on women because they tend to be employed in industries that are hardest hit, like retail, tourism, hospitality. And we found that fewer women have jobs that allow them to telecommute. Just looking at the numbers alone, women make up over 90% of the net job losses in the US since the pandemic. 54% of women overall lost their jobs due to COVID-19, while we only make up 39% of the workforce. And even as we're seeing the increases in employment rising, we're still 2 points behind our male counterparts in obtaining those jobs. And so, as we look forward, the calls that we're getting are similar to what you're getting. Unemployment didn't start. And we're blessed in the city to have a workforce development board and a Department of Labor connection right here in the city of Newark where we can connect people in real time. So please send over that information for that young lady and we'll definitely try to connect her to someone who can help. But we're getting the calls. I've been applying for jobs. I'm not getting anything, or my industry, they kept me on payroll as long as they could. But now I'm going to be losing my job. And so we had an opportunity through this pandemic, as we were getting those calls, to stand up what we called an emergency response unit to connect employers and employees to real-time jobs. And these are jobs that typically might have been out of scope at a certain point, but because we had such a demand in healthcare, we were able to move folks into positions just to keep them working. Some of the other things that we've heard is just, I can't pay my utilities. Some folks are able to really keep the rent paid or the mortgage paid, but being home all day, your lights are on all day. The kids are home all day. You've had to upgrade your internet speed. So we're seeing that technical divide and the disparities in technology rearing its head in a lot of our communities. And so I was on a call today, an asset building coalition, where we're looking to identify ways to support people in the community through different ways, whether it be rental and mortgage assistance, looking at helping folks file their taxes so they get their earned income tax credit that could help pay, a few of these bills down. The other thing that we're working really hard on is working with employers to help train or find those positions that we can train residents for. One of the things that came about very quickly in the pandemic is we realized that the jobs that a lot of our community has are the first ones laid off and the last to come back. And so we were able to now start looking and having real conversations with employers to say, you know, we understand your commitment. We know what the workforce looks like. Can you, based upon your succession planning, tell us what jobs are going to be available in the next year so that we can start getting folks ready for those positions? How do we help our community pivot for some of these jobs that were more manual into jobs that utilize more technology? And so we've done a lot of work there. And then, you know, the last thing for us is that looking at how we can prevent what some are calling the great she session, you know, just this, the massive flight of women out of the workforce. How do we use our village and form supportive communities that offer childcare? Because we know that's one of the biggest drivers here with you know, job loss, is that they don't have anyone to care for the kids, or the kids are homeschooling. So they oftentimes, the wife, the mother, has to take on that responsibility. So we're looking at just forming supportive communities, reforming our villages, reconnecting with our villages to see how we can support women in this space. And I would just like to, you know, I wasn't going to share some of this, but I feel like it's really important. Sometimes we get really comfortable in our own spaces, and we forget that what seems minor to us is a very big deal for some. So as I entered the pandemic, I noticed how a lot of our community wasn't able just to navigate the systems. You know, being able to connect to someone and say, this is what I need. This is where the gap is. And so I would say to everyone on this call, when you hear someone who's struggling or hear someone who's just having a hard time and can't figure it out, don't assume that they know what to do. That was the one thing we had to debunk in our office. You know, folks just don't know what they don't know. They don't have, or they don't know what they don't have because they've never had it. And so stepping out of that comfort zone to do that. I had an experience at a hospital system, who shall go nameless at this point. We can talk offline about this later, but I found myself at the intersectionality of social injustice and health inequities. You know, I was undergoing a diagnosis, and I had a physician tell me, oh, it's nothing, with no background, no information, you know, not considering my previous health conditions, because like Norma, I'm high risk, you know, I couldn't get out there on the front line. And, you know, I just had the sound mind to call my primary care physician, who is a wonderful woman of color. And I said, I just want you to put eyes on this. I want you to listen to this experience and tell me how I should move forward. And she absolutely pointed out, no, you need further testing. You need to explore this more. And so as we think about all of the different things that folks are going through, you know, step out of your comfort zone, lend a hand, lend an ear, guide, guide folks. We sometimes think that folks over 25 don't need a mentor. Everyone needs someone they can talk to. Everyone needs someone that they can relate to. Everyone needs just an ear, especially during this period of isolation.
Thank you so much for that. Oh my goodness, some nuggets there. Something for us to think about. So Donna, here's the deal. You know, I love the arts. I love the theater. I love musicals. I'm a pianist. And as I told you, like Antoinette, a former English teacher, I just love books and plays. And then all of a sudden, the lights went out. And, you know, I remember year before last, all of the big hullabaloo, Our Dear Crossroads, unveiled that state-of-the-art building. And we're like, look where Crossroads is now. This is going to be the bomb. And they had so many things planned for 2020. And then here we go. I looked at the Newark Museum, the new director, executive
And
director who's brought in, right? And then all of a sudden, she was only there for a New York minute, and here we have COVID. So let's talk about this industry. How did the industry have to remake itself, and what can we anticipate moving forward?
oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Jeannine. And thank you, Pamela, for inviting me. And thank all these fabulous women. You have shared such amazing information. Boy, this is like going to class. So thank you. You know, I was at NJPAC in the office, actually, you know, when we were advised that we were closing down. I think it was March 12th. And, you know, we just had to move very quickly and gather what we thought we only need for 3 months, because that's what everyone was saying. It's just going to be 3 months. We'll be back in May. I'm like, oh, okay. So we'll just figure out how to work from home. But then, of course, things increased. And one of the quotes that I used, I read, and I thought, this is my opportunity to kind of transform the way I have been engaging in the arts and what I hope the arts will also change. So I'm just going to share this very quick. It's by an Indian female writer. Her name is Arundhati Roy, one of my favorite writers. And she says, historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, dead rivers and smoky skies, or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. So I made up my mind. This was my opportunity to move through this movement in a whole different way, and not to look behind and say, oh, we used to have performances here. Oh, we used to do this. No. What is going to be different about this? So we did several things, you know, at NJPAC. First of all, NJPAC has the smartest marketing team. It's just incredible. And then we have such amazing leaders and visionaries there, you know, of course, leading with John Schreiber. Everybody there is just at the top of their game. So we immediately said, we're going to put everything we do online. So we created a whole new stage, virtual space. And under the direction of Aisha Marable, who is our Director of Community Engagement, we transferred all of our programming into a virtual space. So we didn't miss a beat. And that has allowed us to expand our audiences way beyond what the space will enable us to do. Yeah. So we have our Wednesday wellness classes, you know, we have our panel discussions, we have our jazz engagement. So all of those things that were important to us, we were able to continue and to be a leader for the whole performing arts industry, because the performing arts industry around the country, we're all trying to figure out, okay, wait, well, how are we doing this? How can we do? We don't have a Broadway show. We don't have Diana Ross coming. What are we doing? And so they were able to follow our model of how you can transfer, you know, all of the programming in a virtual way. So that has been moving forward very successfully. And then, you know, we had the murder of George Floyd, which really changed our programming. So now we do everything through the lens of social justice. And so we rolled out a whole series of monthly panel discussions and films that explore what are the injustices that Black people are experiencing, and what are the action steps we can take? And so this pandemic has enabled New Jersey Performing Arts Center to really look at how we do business. How do we continue to hold our community dear to our heart? We never drop, we never stop contacting them, we never let them know how important and valuable they are. And that, I think, has demonstrated to us that you can utilize a very tragic circumstance into something that can be incredibly promising and profitable. So that's one thing that's been happening with NJPAC. On the commercial stage, you know, Broadway, they suffer tremendously because Broadway stopped. And that we're talking billions of dollars of income that have just gone away, with so many actors not being able to do their work. But again, after the murder of George Floyd, the Black and Brown community found their voice. They issued a document called "We See You, White American Theater," a 33-page document that said, stop your racist behavior. Stop it right now. And these are the things that we want you to change. 33 pages. They sent that letter to every Broadway producer, to every theater owner, director, to nonprofits everywhere throughout the industry. And it has, the effect has been amazing. It has required these theaters to respond. You can't ignore it because they have a website and it's very public, very transparent, and they list who they sent it to, who's responded, and who's changing things. So the empowerment that has come through these pandemics, because we had 3 pandemics, you know, it was COVID, it was addressing racism, and then the political divisiveness that we've all experienced. 3, that we've all had to kind of wrestle with. How do we live now in this new era? And so the Dear White American Theater movement is transforming theater around the country. We have seen a record number of Black and brown artistic directors being hired for theaters around the country that never were being considered, and not just in theater, but in the museum world, in the music industry. So there is a moment of an awakening. There's a crack in the door, and I think we have to put our foot in it, push that door open and say, this is our time. And I believe that beginning with COVID gave us that moment of reflection, but also to realize this isn't going to be good enough. And I want to see how things can change and what can I do to change that? So that's been very inspiring for me personally. You know, I have a number of clients and I travel, you know, also quite a bit, and to not step on a plane for me has been wonderful. I haven't missed one trip. So that I'm good with that. That's fine. And what I've done, of course, is transfer everything to virtual space. So I'm on Zoom from 9 in the morning to sometimes 8 p.m. at night, working with different clients. And what's been great about the arts, we're still thriving. We are still creating value in our work. So all my clients are arts organizations. So nothing stopped in terms of how do we make ourselves better? And so COVID has enabled the arts industry to look inward, to say, okay, we're also with racist organizations, and what can we do to change our behavior? And so the whole movement now has gone from just looking at performances to looking at equity, diversity, inclusion. How can we create this culture of diversity? What does that look like? So there's now a myriad of workshops and courses that are being offered and taught and led to the arts industry around the country. So again, Black and brown people standing up and saying, this is our time. And we are sitting at the table, we're creating the table, and we're going to make some decisions about how things move forward. That's been very inspiring, and I feel very privileged to be a part of that community as well. And I teach also, you know, at Columbia and NYU. And again, it was, you know, kind of strange teaching, you know, on a computer screen. And the students were still trying to figure out, well, who am I? Where am I? What is this course? But, you know, been able to lead them through. And because, frankly, they didn't have any choice, you know, I think that they have still been very productive, you know, in these courses and the new classroom that they've had to face. On a personal level, you know, my daughter was scheduled to start her first year at Morgan State this past August, and we had so many plans. We had picked up furniture, the design, you know, her roommate, all these things. And then, you know, of course, she couldn't come. So what's been great is that she and I have had a chance to really, really have fun together, because she's here all the time and I'm here all the time and I was never here all the time. And so that's been great to really enjoy and listen to her as a young lady growing up, hearing how she's coming about making decisions, watching how she's approaching her work at school and then her friends also. But to the point of how it's affected young people, I can definitely see, you know, that it's very difficult for them to navigate this quarantine space. So that's also been something we've been trying to work through, and I'm trying to support her as much as possible. October 30th, my mom passed. My mom was 96 and she passed away from Alzheimer's. She did not have COVID. She lived in Chicago under the care of my 2 sisters. And what was challenging was I couldn't travel to go to the funeral. But my mom knew she was going to go because she visited each of us that week before, just in her energy, because she had stopped eating and drinking a good week before. So we knew if you don't eat or drink, you can't really live. And so her caretaker had FaceTime, and I had FaceTime. So the day before she passed, I had scheduled a FaceTime. I said, okay, I want to see mom. So I was able to see her and, just try to send her my love and my energy, how much I appreciated so much everything she had given me and my sisters to have the most incredible life. And so I was actually teaching when she literally passed away. It was at 9:30 on Friday morning. And I knew she'd gone. I felt her energy that said, okay, you girls, you know what to do. And I was teaching this course and I thought, should I stop? What do I do? And I asked, I said, Mom, should I, continue finishing up this class? And she said, oh, I'm good. Finish up. So I finished up my class. And we had an amazing virtual memorial for her with over 200 of her friends, and our friends, really celebrating her life and all the things she loved, African dance, the music, her gospel songs, all of those things. So I really felt, wow, this quarantine has made it so difficult to see each other, but it doesn't mean we can't honor and celebrate and love. And that we absolutely made happen. So I know my mom is in a good space right now. My sisters, we all, moving our lives and seeing how we can continue to honor her legacy. And my daughter, who's named after my mom, I said, okay, girl, we got to make this happen. And so this has been a fascinating time. I am very much following this quote that I use about making this a portal and seeing how my life can really continue to add value, just as so many of you have said, and really looking at what are the opportunities that are different from what we did before, and not saying, well, we used to or I wish, but looking ahead and saying, how marvelous this future looks, and I'm going to claim it as mine. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, when we first started this journey, I said 7:30. How are we ever going to fill up all of that time? We're at 7:24, and I still have about 8 questions I wanted to ask everyone. So I'm not going to keep you here for a midnight glass of wine or whatever you're going to have tonight. So we're going to close at 7:30. But I was looking to see whether or not there were questions. And ironically, we got, because you actually took people to church tonight. I want you to know that. Your comments. And if you look in the chat, people don't have questions. They have all of the atta girls and oh my goodness, they have a lot of comments. They don't have a lot of questions. We did have one thing, Christina, for you. It had to do with whether or not you're finding in the legal profession, whether or not employers are in compliance with what they should have been during the lockdown time. How are employees faring when it comes to sick time? Or are there any complaints that you know of through the legal system there?
Well, it's an interesting question. I just had a client talk to me about that the other day, and she works for a major airline that was not giving out protective equipment with its employees, dealing directly with the public. As a criminal and sort of traffic DWI attorney, I don't really hear that many complaints about employers, but it is amazing that it is still prevalent and that the employers just don't get it. I think before COVID, we came from a society where when we were sick, we went to work. When we were sick, we went to work. There were tissue boxes all over the place and people saying, I made it, I'm okay, and I can do it, and I can push through. So I think the employers do have legal requirements and many are not living up to those legal requirements. But I think we have to get out of the state of mind that when we're sick, we should continue working, whether that's at home or whether that's at a job. We have to get out of that mentality. And I think we've been pushed out of that mentality.
Thank you. And I also wanted to go to Mildred, not Council President, Mildred, even though I'm
Thank
looking at
you.
it, says Council President. Um, I know I looked at what the mayor had to do during the height of the pandemic, and I had him on my show several times where he talked about it. Tell us what it was like. I mean, we had the largest number. It was Bergen County at first, and then Newark just went off the chart. And the mayor just had to say, this is it. Everybody, you're in, even if you're in an apartment. What was that like, Mildred, what you had to do with your neighbors and your constituents in the city?
Well, for those of you who know the Honorable Raz Joa Baraka, he put his foot down.
Yes, he did.
One of the things I love about the mayor is he gives the leadership latitude. And all of a sudden, I guess he said to himself, this is not working. City Hall, of course, was shut down. The protocols, all of them, were in place, not just for the employees, but the mayor actually set the stage and the posture that we should have. One of the things, and Donna kind of hit on it, but let me kind of stick a pin in it. This was one of the most unbelievable part of creation that most of us had been exposed to. And people who are in the business of making decisions, not just following decisions, thought they knew more than the mayor did. There were those people who put out flyers saying that COVID is not real. Somebody just made it up. While they were going through that foolishness, as my mother would say, COVID was growing like none other that we had ever seen. I remember Ebola and several of the other epidemic, not pandemic, but epidemics that we had. I am happy to say to you that our numbers are going down. Irene Daniels and I, when we went to get our shot, it was early. And we walked right in, we were registered, and we got our shot. When we went back to get the second shot, it was a whole different ballgame. By then, enough information had circulated throughout the city of Newark, and people began to understand this was something real. It was not something that someone had made up. It was a game changer, and it forced most of us to rearrange our priorities. I want to just add a little bit. Somebody had 125 hats. I have 125 hats. I think that was Jeannine. I think it was Della who said she had so many shoes. I had about 200 shoes. I need to tell you, COVID has turned my life upside down, inside out. I no more care about how I look as opposed to what I do to make better for others. And certainly this panel, yum yum to everybody. I hope that you'll do a part 2.
This is phenomenal.
I hope you'll be a part 2.
Thank you so much, Mildred. Thank you so much. And I have to tell you, before we bring on the real host, she called me the host, but nobody can be the host like Pamela. She came up with this concept, and I'm telling you, she took it home. Before we bring her on, I want to acknowledge and ask him to please say a couple words. He's my sonny boy. In fact, I want you to know, Assemblyman, Pamela sent me this, she in the chat, she said, would you please call on our Assemblyman? I was like, I already texted him. No way in the world were we gonna leave this house today without
That's
hearing from Assemblyman Holly. We appreciate and love you so much, Jamal. Please give us some words of encouragement.
Well, thank you, Mama LaRue. And, you know, to be on a call with all these amazing women on a Friday night is, you know, it's very inspirational as I sit here and I listen to the entire panel and the discussion that was going on. It's been very encouraging for me. And I think that the concept that I think we all can leave with here is all we do have is us. It has not stopped for us on the state level during the pandemic, right? Because the matters were left into state government. So from the start of the pandemic till now, we've been working ever since trying to adjust, you know, to this pandemic, you know, on the state level with the amount of laws that we have to enact and all the pieces that move so fast. It's been, you know, an experience for me. I've never had to deal with anything like this. And I know many of you haven't, but you've been through some really rough times in life. But for me as an elected official on the state level, it's been very challenging. All too often, we hear in the course of this conversation about the African-American community and the Latino community we have been hardest hit, and we still don't have those resources that are rendered down to our community. And for someone like me, you know, it's important for me to be that voice in that particular room to make sure that a lot of these laws that are passed, that we have at least our piece of the pie to try to, you know, get the resources for our community. So, you know, it's been very challenging for me, but tonight was very inspirational to so many of these powerful women, and all of you who haven't even had a chance to speak, but those that have had a chance to speak. But to just have this kind of gathering for me is very inspirational. So I want to thank Mama Pam Morgan, Mama LaRue, and Mama Mildred Crump for you know, inviting me and informing me about this. But to all the women on this call, I see my law professor, Professor Bennett, who instilled in me as a young man in law school to read Jamel, read Jamel, read Jamel, read Jamel. But as a lawmaker, that's what I have to do, because these laws, you know, are moving so rapidly. You know, the devils are in the details, right? So we have to be very cognizant of what, you know, we're voting on when we press that yes or that no button. But tonight was just great. It's a Friday night. I'm here with all these wonderful, powerful women. I think the only other male on here is Andrew. So it's been very, very great to hear a lot of what you all have to say, and I agree with a lot what you all have to say. And sometimes and often it gets a little lonely in that chambers when you want to step out and step up on issues that you know are relative to our community, because some folks just don't understand. And so I'm a reminder in that state house that African Americans and Latinos, we do exist. And these are some things that are going on in our communities that we need to address, even up until today, with the shortage of the vaccines, the shortage of access to affordable health care, all the other matters that we've discussed here. I'm that constant reminder in that state house that we do exist. And so it's very inspiring for me tonight. I wish I had my nieces. I'm a single parent uncle daddy.
Yeah.
Raising 3 young ladies. One happens to be now a teenager. God, you know, pray for me, please. But I wish I would have had them here tonight, but they're out with their friends, and it's been very challenging for them too. School, you know, just the social parts of it, I could just see the change. And one of the panelists said that not give them an excuse, but really understand some of the decisions that they make even now as young ladies, to try to hear them out a little different. And that's a good takeaway for me as an uncle daddy, raising them, because it's been very difficult for them during this time as well. So I want to just thank each and every one of you for your enlightenment on this call tonight. And Mama LaRue and Mama Pam Morgan, thank you so much for all that you instilled into me, Professor Bennett, going back to my law school days. But it was just a tremendous opportunity for me to share in this conversation and discussion tonight. I listened, I watched, I heard, and it was very inspiring for me. So thank you for the opportunity just to say a few words, but I was just here to just hear you out. There's some very impactful women on this call, and I need some help with my girls. So if any of you want to adopt 3 young ladies on the weekend or during the week, you're more than welcome to help me out. But again, thank you so much. And this was very enlightening tonight. And we all we have. And God bless you all, and Godspeed, and continue to be safe and healthy. God bless you and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamel. And, we love you. It's kind of funny, as you were winding down your comments, Pamela, I thought about you. I got a couple tears in my eyes, because I'm like, oh man, it's over. So now I get to go over on the other part of the house that's dark and turn on a couple of lights and sit down and talk with my dogs and say, well, you know what? We're making it through another weekend. Pamela has changed my life in so many ways. And when I first met her and she said she wanted me to come, she wanted to honor me with the women in media. Mm-hmm. And we really connected and just became very close. And I'm always admiring her jewelry. And that's when she shared with me that she makes jewelry. And she said, well, I could teach you how to make jewelry. And I'm thinking, there's no way in the world, because I tried crocheting and knitting, all that for years, never learned how to do one stitch. But she was convinced she could help me make jewelry. And she came all the way down here to Trenton to my home. And we had a sisters Saturday where my sister came over, my partner's sister came over, and we had 2 other women, their sisters came, and she had the patience of Job. And when we were done on that Saturday, I had made one of the most beautiful necklaces. I was so excited. And then she got me going to bead shows, and now I make my own jewelry. And I'm telling you, I don't want to brag, but I can make some jewelry now. And I never thought that I would be able to do that. But yeah, she's introduced me to a lot of great things. So when she said she wanted to do this on a Friday night, I'm like, Lord, have mercy. Why can't we do it between Monday to Thursday? But you never say anything like that to Pamela, because she's so sincere. And she said, we're only going to do 6 to 7:30. And I had all these meetings today, all these Zoom and another panel I had to moderate. And I said, oh man, this day is not over yet. I got 6 o'clock. But I'm going to tell you something, my sisters. You have sent me off tonight with a song in my heart. You have no freaking idea. I needed this. I don't know what you all are walking away from here with this tonight, but I needed this. And as my mom and them would say down in Virginia, I needed y'all. And I hope that some of y'all needed me, because this was a night. So we're going to close it down with our real host, the woman of the hour, Pamela Morgan. And you're muted, my sister.
Yes, let's give Jeannine and the panelists a big hand. Thank you to Jamal and to Andrew for being here. And this was, and I am as inspired and full as anyone else. And it's interesting because when I look at the audience, I see we have an audience of experts also. And we are so blessed to be in such rich company. And perhaps the part 2 should be a conversation circle where everyone comes together and shares. Think about it. I put my email address in the chat. Let me know what you think a part 2 should be, and then we'll plan it. I think that it would be good. But it's 7:43 and I don't want to hold you. Thank you for inspiring me, to each of the panelists. I am humbled and delighted and hope to see you soon. Thank you. Good night. Bye, Stacy.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank
Bye.
you, Jules. Have a
Thank
great
you.
night.
Everyone. Good
Bye-bye.
job,
Thank you,
Norma.
all of you. Good night.
Good
Have a
night.
good night, everyone.
Take care.
Good night.
Good
It's great.
night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night. Thank you for coming.
Bye.
Thank you all for coming.
Treasurer's report
Oopsie. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
So you can go all over, I guess, maybe all
So Jeannine, this was wonderful.
Oh
Thank
my
you.
goodness. Unbelievable.
It's a wonderful,
Unbelievable.
right? The perfect
The
women.
panel and the oh, there's Wendy. I haven't seen Wendy in years.
Hey, I'm in the car.
What?
Hey,
I'm
Wendy.
Wendy.
I'm driving from Princeton. I'm in the car. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you.
Oh,
Wow.
Pamela, it's been years. I mean, it's been maybe 2 decades.
Wow.
Oh
Yes,
my
Jeannine,
goodness.
I miss you. You're still on the case as
That's the
usual, my
truth.
sister.
Thank you. Thank you. I love you.
Yes, and a part 2 is definitely in order. Definitely.
Without question.
Matter of fact, this could be a quarterly conversation of sisters. This was energizing. It was like a balm for me. It was like the balm in
Yes.
Gilead for me. So thank you guys. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad.
So I'm at a red light, so I'm gonna go.
Okay.
Be careful.
All right.
All right. I'm gonna sign
You
off
take
too.
care. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. I love you.
Love you too.
Jeannine,
And thank you.
Jeannine, I'm gonna get
Yes.
your email address from Pam.
Okay, do that. Do that,
All
please.
right.
All right.
All
Okay.
right.
All
Love
right,
you
everyone.
guys.
Thank you
All
for
right.
being
Night,
here.
Good
night.
night.
All righty. Good night.